There is something about silence that unsettles the human mind. We are creatures addicted to movement, to feedback, to visible signs that things are happening. We feel secure when there is noise, when there are signals, when life gives us constant reassurance. But the moment that reassurance disappears, the moment the answers stop arriving, the moment the world grows quiet, something inside us begins to shake. Doubt creeps in, fear finds a voice, and suddenly what was once patience turns into anxiety. But silence has never been empty. Silence is not a void, it is a workshop. When the distractions fade, when the applause vanishes and the external validation disappears, something far more important begins to take place. You are confronted with yourself, your thoughts, your beliefs, your insecurities, your habits. All of it rises to the surface. Silence removes the noise that once allowed you to avoid the deeper work. And the deeper work, my friends, is where transformation lives. Consider this carefully. The most important growth in life is rarely visible. When a seed is planted, nothing dramatic happens at first. There is no spectacle, no celebration, no immediate proof that anything is changing. Beneath the soil, hidden from sight, roots are forming. Strength is developing, stability is being established. And if you judge that process only by what you could see, you would assume nothing was happening at all. But the nature of silence in those quiet seasons of your life, when progress seems frozen, when prayers feel unanswered, when opportunities appear delayed, the instinct is to panic. The instinct is to assume abandonment, to believe that the absence of visible movement means the absence of meaningful change. Yet life does not operate on the shallow timeline of our impatience. The most powerful shifts occur beneath the surface, outside the range of immediate perception. Silence is often the environment where preparation occurs. Noise entertains you, but silence educates you. Noise distracts you, but silence reveals you. In the noise, you react. In the silence, you reflect. And reflection is where clarity is born. It is where you begin to understand your patterns, your fears, your potential, your direction. Without silence, many of the realizations that shape a life of purpose would never emerge. But here lies the challenge. Silence is uncomfortable because it denies us instant gratification. It forces us to sit with uncertainty. It demands trust without evidence. It requires belief without immediate reward. And for many people, that discomfort is unbearable. They interpret stillness as stagnation. They mistake quiet for neglect. They walk away from the process simply because it does not move at the speed of their expectations. Yet history, nature, and human experience repeat the same lesson again and again. Stillness is not an activity. A foundation is laid in stillness. Muscles strengthen in rest. Strategies are built in contemplation. Identity is shaped in solitude. The world celebrates visible victories, but it is the unseen preparation that makes those victories possible. What looks like nothing from the outside may be everything from within. And understand this, silence does not mean you are being ignored. Often it means you are being developed. There are qualities that only emerge when the noise disappears. Discipline without supervision, confidence without applause, persistence without encouragement. These are the traits that define enduring success, and they are almost always forged in moments where nothing external seems to be happening. When life grows quiet, something is being rearranged, something is being clarified. But only those with patience recognize it. Only those with faith endure it. Only those with vision refuse to misinterpret it. Because impatience asks, why is nothing happening? And that single shift in perspective can change everything. So when you encounter silence in your journey, when doors remain closed, when answers feel delayed, when progress seems invisible, do not rush to despair. Do not assume absence. Do not abandon belief. Stand steady in the understanding that growth is not always loud, that progress is not always visible, and that preparation is rarely dramatic. Pressure has a way of arriving uninvited, without warning, without concern for your comfort. It does not ask whether you feel ready. It does not negotiate with your fears. It simply appears, tightening circumstances, increasing demands, testing limits, and the natural human reaction is resistance. We try to escape it, avoid it, outrun it. We treat pressure like an enemy, like a destructive force determined to break us down. But pressure in its truest form is not designed to destroy you. It is designed to reveal you. Think about that. Under ease, almost anyone can appear confident. Under comfort, discipline is easy to fake. When life is smooth, when obstacles are absent, when everything flows effortlessly, it is difficult to measure true strength. Calm waters do not test the stability of a ship. Clear skies do not prove the skill of a pilot. It is the storm that exposes structure. It is the turbulence that reveals control. Pressure strips away illusion. When the weight increases, when expectations rise, when uncertainty surrounds you, the masks begin to fall. Excuses lose their power. Pretenses disappear. What remains is the raw truth of your mindset, your habits, your resilience, your emotional control. Pressure acts like a mirror, reflecting not who you pretend to be, but who you truly are in moments of challenge. And that reflection is invaluable, because you cannot strengthen what you do not see. You cannot refine what you do not recognize. Pressure brings hidden weaknesses into the light: hesitation, self-doubt, fear of failure, lack of preparation, fragile confidence. Not to shame you, not to defeat you, but to show you precisely where growth is required. Pressure is feedback. It is life's way of saying, here is where you must expand. But there is another side to this experience, one that most people overlook. Pressure does not only expose weakness, it also uncovers dormant strengths. Abilities you never knew you possessed begin to surface. Creativity sharpens, focus intensifies, instincts heighten. Survival demands adaptation, and adaptation awakens potential. Human beings have an extraordinary capacity for growth when comfort is removed. When options narrow, resourcefulness expands. When stakes rise, attention deepens. When difficulty increases, resilience is summoned. Pressure forces you to access parts of yourself that ease would never require. It pushes you beyond the boundaries of perceived limitation and into the territory of untapped capability. This is why some of your greatest breakthroughs will follow your hardest challenges, not because pressure is pleasant. It rarely is, but because pressure compels evolution. It demands that you think differently, act differently, become different. It eliminates complacency. It disrupts stagnation. It ignites change. Yet many people misinterpret this entire process. They feel the discomfort of pressure and immediately conclude that something is wrong. They interpret difficulty as a signal to retreat. They see challenge as evidence of incapacity rather than opportunity for expansion. And in doing so, they rob themselves of the very growth pressure was meant to create. Pressure is not proof that you are failing. Often it is proof that you are being stretched. And stretching by its nature is uncomfortable. Muscles ache when they grow. Minds resist when they expand. Habits protest when they are challenged, but discomfort is not damage. Difficulty is not defeat. Tension is not termination. It is transformation in progress. Consider how strength is built in the physical world. Resistance is required. Weight is necessary. Without tension, there is no growth. The same principle governs mental and emotional development. Pressure creates resistance, and resistance builds capacity. But here lies the critical choice. Pressure can either refine you or overwhelm you. The determining factor is not the intensity of the pressure itself, but the interpretation you assign to it. Do you view it as an attack, or as training? Do you experience it as punishment or preparation? Do you collapse beneath it or rise through it? Because pressure does not dictate outcome, response does. And those who learn to embrace pressure, to see it not as an adversary, but as a sculptor, discover something remarkable. What once felt suffocating becomes strengthening. What once felt threatening becomes sharpening. What once felt unbearable becomes the very force that reveals their highest potential. Pressure, when understood correctly, becomes an ally. Delay has a peculiar power over the human spirit. It tests patience in ways that difficulty alone cannot. When obstacles appear, at least you can see what stands in your path. When resistance rises, you can identify the challenge. But delay is different. Delay is invisible. Delay offers no clear opponent, no defined struggle, no obvious explanation. It simply stretches time, leaving you suspended between expectation and uncertainty. And in that suspension, the mind begins to wonder. Questions emerge, doubts multiply. Why is this taking so long? What am I doing wrong? Maybe it isn't meant for me. The absence of immediate results begins to feel like rejection, though. The lack of visible progress starts to resemble failure. And before long, discouragement takes root, not because the goal is impossible, but because the timeline has refused to obey your desires. But delay is often direction in disguise. Life operates with a rhythm far more complex than our impatience can comprehend. What you want now may require preparation you do not yet recognize. What you seek immediately may demand strength, wisdom, discipline, or perspective that can only be developed through time. And yet, when results do not appear according to our schedule, we rush to interpret the pause as refusal rather than refinement. Consider how easily we equate speed with success. We celebrate quick wins, rapid progress, instant breakthroughs. But what arrives quickly is not always what endures. What appears immediately is not always what sustains. Many of the most valuable achievements in life require a slow construction, a steady shaping, a deliberate sequence of events that cannot be hurried without consequence. Timing is not an inconvenience of life. Timing is one of its greatest tools. There are lessons that cannot be rushed. There is maturity that cannot be accelerated. Delay creates the space where these invisible necessities take form. It builds patience. It sharpens persistence. It strengthens belief. It forces you to examine your motives, your commitment, your resilience. Without delay, many ambitions would collapse under the weight of premature arrival. Imagine receiving responsibility before developing discipline. Imagine achieving visibility before building character. Imagine gaining opportunity before acquiring capability. What feels like waiting may actually be protection from outcomes you are not yet equipped to handle. Delay is often preparation at work behind the scenes, but the difficulty lies in perception. When nothing appears to move, frustration grows. When effort yields no immediate reward, motivation weakens. Human nature craves feedback, evidence, reassurance, and delay offers none of these comforts. It demands trust without proof, effort without applause, belief without visible confirmation. This is why delay separates the committed from the merely interested. Anyone can pursue a goal when results are swift. Anyone can maintain enthusiasm when progress is obvious. But the true test of determination emerges when movement slows, when signs disappear, when success feels distant. In those moments, many retreat. They assume the absence of immediate reward signifies the absence of future possibility. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates a different truth. Great achievements are rarely born on demand. Mastery requires time. Excellence demands repetition. Depth grows through endurance. The most powerful transformations are gradual, unfolding in ways too subtle for impatient eyes to appreciate. Delay is not a barrier. It is a filter. It removes those who lack persistence. It strengthens those who remain. It reveals whether your desire is conditional upon speed or grounded in conviction. And because when you continue, despite delay, when you persist without visible progress, when you maintain discipline without immediate gratification, something extraordinary begins to develop. Inner stability. You detach from the tyranny of timelines. You stop measuring progress solely by external signals. You learn to value growth that is invisible, preparation that is silent, development that is gradual, and in doing so, you acquire a resilience that rapid success could never produce. The delay reshapes your relationship with time itself. Instead of asking, why is this not happening yet? You begin asking, who must I become while? It unfolds. Instead of interpreting the pause as rejection, you recognize it as construction. Instead of surrendering to impatience, you anchor yourself in persistence. Because delay does not mean no. Often it means not yet. And not yet carries possibility, potential, promise. It implies continuation, not conclusion. It suggests unfolding, not abandonment. But only those with patience remain long enough to witness its purpose. Struggle has a reputation that frightens most people. The word itself carries weight, discomfort, resistance. It conjures images of hardship, of exhaustion, of moments where effort feels heavier than hope. And because of that, many spend their lives attempting to avoid struggle, believing that a smooth path is the ultimate sign of success. But there is a truth that experience eventually reveals to anyone paying close attention. Struggle is not merely an obstacle in life, it is one of life's greatest architects. Comfort can introduce you to yourself, but struggle defines you. Ease can make you feel capable, but adversity proves what you are truly made of. When everything flows effortlessly, when circumstances cooperate, when resistance is absent, it is easy to maintain confidence. It is easy to speak of discipline, resilience, belief. But those qualities are theoretical until tested. They are ideas until challenged. They are words until reality demands evidence. Struggle is that demand. When difficulties rise, when plans collapse, when uncertainty replaces clarity, identity is placed under pressure. Not the identity you project to the world, not the image crafted for approval, but the core of who you are when excuses lose their power. In struggle, pretense fades, external validation becomes scarce, and what remains is the raw encounter between your mindset and your circumstances. This is where identity is forged because struggle forces decisions that comfort never requires. Will you persist or withdraw? Will you adapt or complain? Will you assume responsibility or assign blame? Each challenge becomes a crossroads, each setback an invitation to reveal your character. And though these moments may feel punishing, they are in fact shaping something far more valuable than temporary ease. They are shaping self-definition. Understand this carefully. Identity is not built from success alone. If that were true, anyone who achieved comfort would possess unshakable confidence, unwavering discipline, limitless resilience. Yet reality tells a different story. Many crumble despite achievement. Many falter despite opportunity. Why? Because identity built only on favorable conditions is fragile. It has never been tested by resistance, never strengthened by hardship, never anchored by adversity. Struggle builds internal structure. When you face difficulty, you are forced to confront your assumptions. You discover the difference between interest and commitment, between desire and determination. You learn whether your confidence depends on outcomes or originates from within. You begin to see your fears not as abstract worries, but as barriers demanding navigation. Struggle clarifies truth. It exposes the narratives you carry about yourself. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable. I can't handle this. And then through endurance, through persistence, through the simple refusal to surrender, those narratives begin to fracture. You realize that limits once perceived as fixed were often flexible. You discover reserves of patience, creativity, courage that comfort never required you to access. This is why those who endure struggle often emerge transformed, not merely more successful, but more grounded, not merely more accomplished, but more certain of who they are. Because identity earned through adverse. It possesses a stability that ease alone cannot produce. It is rooted not in circumstance, but in experience, not in luck, but in resilience. But struggle offers no guarantees. It presents opportunity, not outcome. It provides the conditions for growth, not the certainty of it. The determining factor is always response. Some encounter struggle and shrink, interpreting difficulty as evidence of incapacity. Others encounter the same difficulty and expand, recognizing challenge as the very mechanism through which strength is developed. Struggle does not dictate identity, reaction does. Every hardship carries within it a question: will this break you or will this build you? And the answer is rarely found in the struggle itself, but in the choices made within it. Persistence over withdrawal, responsibility over blame, adaptation over resistance, growth over resignation. Because adversity is not merely something to survive, it is something that shapes who you become. And when viewed through that lens, struggle loses its purely negative meaning. It becomes a training ground, a refining fire, a force that strips away illusion and demands authenticity. It becomes the environment where resilience is strengthened, where belief is tested, where identity moves from concept to reality. Faith is often misunderstood because people reduce it to a feeling. They imagine it as an emotion that arrives when circumstances are favorable, when confidence is high, when outcomes appear promising. But feelings are unstable. They rise and fall with conditions. They fluctuate with success and disappointment, with comfort and difficulty. If faith depended solely on emotion, it would collapse the moment life became uncertain. Real faith is not emotional. It is behavioral. It is the decision to move forward when clarity is absent. It is the discipline to continue when motivation fades it. It's a quiet, unglamorous commitment to act despite doubt, despite fear, despite the absence of immediate results. Anyone can feel optimistic when everything is working. Anyone can feel confident when progress is obvious, but faith reveals its true nature when the path is unclear and the outcome invisible. Faith is persistence without reassurance. Consider how easily enthusiasm disguises itself as belief. When energy is high, when inspiration is fresh, effort feels effortless. You wake up driven, excited, certain, but enthusiasm is temporary. It cannot sustain long journeys. It cannot carry you through prolonged difficulty. Eventually, the excitement fades. The novelty disappears. The work becomes repetitive, demanding, slow, and this is where many stop. Not because the goal is unreachable, but because the feeling that once fueled action has evaporated. They wait for motivation to return, for confidence to reappear, for certainty to arrive. But waiting for feelings is a dangerous strategy because feelings obey circumstances, not intentions. Faith operates differently. Faith acts first and feels later. It refuses to make progress dependent on emotional convenience. It understands that consistency, not intensity, determines outcome. It recognizes that meaningful achievement is rarely powered by constant inspiration, but by steady discipline applied regardless of mood. Faith is waking up when you do not feel like it. Faith is continuing when results are delayed. Faith is maintaining standards when nobody is watching. This is why faith is so powerful. It detaches action from emotion. It prevents temporary doubt from becoming permanent inaction. It protects long-term vision from short-term discomfort. It transforms progress from something fragile and conditional into something stable and enduring. But faith does not eliminate doubt. It moves alongside it, co-narratory to popular imagination. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. Doubt is a natural companion of growth. Whenever you step beyond familiarity, whenever you attempt something larger than your past experience, uncertainty will appear, questions will arise, fear will whisper, and faith is not the absence of those voices. It is the refusal to obey them. Faith is courage in motion. It is not waiting for fear to disappear, but proceeding despite its presence. It is not demanding guarantees, but committing to effort. It is not requiring immediate proof, but trusting the process long enough for proof to emerge. Understand the distinction carefully. Wishful thinking waits for certainty. Faith works without it. There will be days when progress feels invisible, when effort seems unrewarded, when fatigue replaces enthusiasm. In those moments, emotion will argue for rest, for delay, for withdrawal. And sometimes rest is necessary. Sometimes recalibration is wise, but too often retreat disguises itself as rationality when it is simply discomfort avoidance. Faith requires discernment. It asks, am I stopping because strategy demands it or because difficulty intimidates me? Because growth is rarely comfortable, improvement is rarely convenient, excellence is rarely effortless. Faith understands this reality and continues anyway. It embraces the monotony, the repetition, the slow accumulation of effort that eventually produces extraordinary outcomes. It recognizes that progress is often imperceptible in the moment, but undeniable in retrospect. And perhaps the most important truth, faith builds self-trust. Every time you act, despite reluctance, despite doubt, despite emotional resistance, you reinforce a powerful internal message. I do not require perfect conditions to move forward. That message strengthens identity. It stabilizes confidence. It transforms resilience. In some theory into lived experience. Faith becomes a habit of action, not an occasional burst of inspiration, but a sustained way of operating. A mindset that measures commitment not by how you feel, but by what you consistently do. Resilience is one of those qualities people admire from a distance but rarely understand up close. It is often spoken of as though it were an inherited trait, a gift granted to a fortunate few, something embedded in personality rather than forged through experience. But resilience is not something you are simply born with. It is something you build choice by choice, response by response, moment by moment. Resilience is a decision before it is a characteristic. Life does not ask whether you would like to be tested. Difficulty arrives without consultation. Setbacks emerge without warning. Plans unravel. Expectations collapse. And in those moments, you are confronted with a fundamental option, not whether the challenge exists, but how you will respond to it. Will you interpret the obstacle as a stopping point or as a demand for adaptation? Will you surrender authority to circumstance or retain responsibility for your reaction? This is where resilience lives. Not in the absence of hardship, but in the presence of it. Not in avoiding difficulty, but in navigating it. Resilience is not demonstrated when everything flows smoothly. It is revealed when progress is interrupted, when effort is resisted, when outcomes deviate from intention. And here is the truth many struggle to accept. Resilience is rarely dramatic. It is not a single heroic act. It is not a sudden burst of extraordinary strength. More often, it is quiet, repetitive, almost invisible. It is getting back up when disappointment weighs heavily. It is continuing when enthusiasm has faded. It is maintaining discipline when results are slow. It is choosing persistence when retreat would be easier, more comfortable, more immediately gratifying. Resilience is built in ordinary moments moments where nobody applauds, moments where no audience exists, moments where the only witness to your decision is you. And because these moments lack spectacle, they are easily underestimated. People imagine that strength is formed through grand challenges, yet most resilience is constructed through small, repeated refusals to give up. Every time you stand back up, something strengthens. Every time you continue despite reluctance, something stabilizes. Every time you refuse to allow temporary discomfort to dictate permanent decisions, something deepens. Resilience accumulates. It grows gradually through consistent responses to adversity. But this accumulation requires awareness because difficulty has a peculiar psychological effect. It magnifies emotion. It narrows perspective. It convinces you that the present moment is permanent, that effort is futile. Yet circumstances are rarely as final as they appear in moments of strain. Resilience requires remembering this. It requires understanding that setbacks are events, not identities, that failure is information, not definition, that difficulty is temporary even when intense. Without this perspective, challenges feel overwhelming. With it, they become navigable. But resilience is not passive endurance. It is active engagement. It is not merely tolerating hardship, but responding intelligently to it, learning, adjusting, refining. Resilient individuals do not simply withstand pressure, they evolve within it. They treat obstacles as feedback, disruptions as instruction, resistance as refinement. They ask not only, how do I survive this, but also, what can this teach me? This shift transforms adversity. What once appeared purely negative becomes instructive. What once seemed like interruption becomes redirection. What once felt like limitation becomes training. Because resilience is strengthened not only by persistence, but by interpretation. How you frame difficulty shapes how you experience it. If every challenge is seen as proof of inadequacy, motivation erodes. If obstacles are interpreted as natural components of growth, perseverance becomes sustainable. Resilience thrives in minds that view hardship as part of the journey rather than evidence of its impossibility. And perhaps the most empowering aspect of resilience, it is always available. It does not require special talent, exceptional intelligence, or extraordinary circumstance. It begins with a single decision available in every difficult moment to rise again. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, not without doubt, but with the simple refusal to remain defeated by temporary conditions. Resilience is not about never falling. It is about never choosing to stay down. There is a moment in every difficult season when the mind begins to ask a dangerous question. Why is this happening to me? It feels natural, almost automatic. When life becomes heavy, when obstacles multiply, when progress slows and frustration grows, the immediate interpretation is often personal. It feels like punishment, like unfairness, like an invisible force working against you. But perception can be deceptive. Not every hardship is an attack. Not every delay is rejection. Not every struggle is evidence of misfortune. Sometimes what feels like life working against you is actually life working on you. Preparation rarely feels comfortable. Growth rarely feels gentle. Development rarely feels like reward. Yet many of the processes that shape strength, clarity, and capability arrive disguised as difficulty. The discomfort you experience is real, but the meaning you assign to T determines whether it becomes destructive or transformative. When challenge is interpreted as punishment, resentment grows, motivation weakens, energy drains. But when the same challenge is viewed as preparation, something remarkable happens. Endurance becomes possible. Consider how easily we celebrate outcomes while overlooking the cost required to produce them. Confidence is admired, but the uncertainty that built it is forgotten. Discipline is praised, but the repetition that created it is invisible. Mastery is respected, but the countless imperfect attempts behind it are rarely acknowledged. The world sees the result and assumes it arrived fully formed. Reality tells a different story. Capacity is expanded through demand. Strength is built through resistance. Wisdom is cultivated through experience. And experience, more often than not, is born in discomfort. What feels like pressure may be expansion. What feels like delay may be refinement. What feels like difficulty may be construction taking place beneath the surface of immediate understanding. Preparation does not announce itself with celebration. It often arrives quietly, wrapped in inconvenience, challenge, and uncertainty. This is why so many misinterpret their hardest seasons. They assume regression when progress is simply invisible. They see obstruction where development is occurring. They perceive loss when redirection is unfolding. And because preparation does not resemble reward, it is easily mistaken for misfortune. But preparation has a distinct purpose. It builds the internal structure required to sustain what you seek. Imagine receiving opportunity without readiness, responsibility without stability. The consequences of premature arrival can be far more damaging than temporary struggle. Many collapses in life do not occur because success was impossible, but because it arrived before preparation was complete. Preparation protects you from fragility. It strengthens patience. It sharpens perspective. It reinforces adaptability. It teaches endurance. It exposes weaknesses that must be addressed before greater challenges emerge. What feels like an unwanted detour may be the very process preventing future failure. Yet preparation demands trust. Trust is difficult when evidence is absent. When circumstances are uncomfortable, when outcomes are uncertain, when progress feels slow, it is tempting to conclude that something has gone wrong. But not all valuable processes produce immediate reassurance. Some require persistence without clarity, effort without visible confirmation. Preparation often operates in silence, and silence is easily misunderstood. But look carefully at your own experiences. Reflect on moments where growth occurred. Rarely did transformation emerge from ease alone. Rarely did strength develop without challenge. Rarely did clarity arise without confusion preceding it. The very qualities that define stability, confidence, and resilience are typically forged in seasons once labeled as difficult, unfair, or exhausting. Perspective reshapes experience. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? A more empowering question emerges. What is this preparing me for? That shift does not eliminate difficulty, but it transforms your relationship with it. Hardship becomes meaningful rather than arbitrary. Discomfort becomes instructive rather than discouraging. The process becomes purposeful rather than punitive, because preparation is rarely about the present moment alone. It is about future capacity. You are being strengthened for challenges not yet visible, opportunities not yet arrived, responsibilities not yet encountered. And though the preparation may feel demanding, though the growth may feel slow, though the path may feel uncertain, the alternative, unprepared arrival carries consequences far greater. There comes a point in every long journey where exhaustion begins to speak louder than ambition. A slow weakening of certainty, a creeping temptation to settle, to stop, to convince yourself that perhaps this far is enough. This is the moment that defines everything, not the beginning, where enthusiasm is strong and energy is abundant. Not the moments of visible progress where motivation is easy and validation is plentiful, but the final stretch, the phase where results are still unseen, where fatigue accumulates, where doubt grows persuasive. This is where most people turn back, not because success was impossible, but because perseverance became uncomfortable. But understand something vital. Difficulty intensifies before breakthrough. Pressure often peaks before release. The night feels darkest before the first hint of dawn. Life has a peculiar way of testing endurance precisely when progress is closest. The challenge is not accidental. It is structural because the final steps demand a different kind of strength than the first. Early effort is powered by excitement. Sustained effort is powered by discipline. But the final stretch requires something deeper, unwavering commitment in the presence of uncertainty. The mind plays tricks in these moments. It magnifies obstacles. It exaggerates fatigue. It whispers convincing arguments for retreat. You've done enough. Maybe this isn't worth it. Why continue when nothing is changing? These thoughts feel rational, even protective, yet they rarely reflect objective truth. They are the natural byproducts of prolonged effort meeting delayed reward. And this is precisely why endurance becomes so rare, because persistence without immediate evidence requires emotional stability, mental clarity, and a refusal to let temporary feelings dictate permanent decisions. The final stretch is less a test of capability and more a test of interpretation. Will you view the difficulty as proof of futility or as a natural phase preceding completion? Nothing meaningful is built without resistance. Nothing extraordinary is achieved without moments where quitting feels justified. But those moments are deceptive. Fatigue does not mean stagnation. Difficulty does not mean defeat. Often, they signal that you are approaching the threshold where many others stopped. Consider how many dreams are abandoned inches from realization. How many goals are relinquished, not at the beginning of struggle, but at its peak. The tragedy is not lack of potential, but lack of patience. Not absence of opportunity, but surrender to temporary discomfort. Endurance changes outcomes. When you remain steady while others retreat, when you persist while others surrender, when you continue while others rationalize withdrawal, you position yourself differently. Time begins to work in your favor. Effort compounds. Small, seemingly insignificant actions accumulate into undeniable progress. But endurance requires perspective. You must learn to see beyond the immediacy of frustration, to understand that progress is often imperceptible in the moment, yet profound over time, to recognize that feelings are temporary, but decisions carry lasting consequences. The discomfort you experience today may be the final barrier separating you from what you once believed impossible. And perhaps the most critical truth: nothing lasts forever. Not difficulty, not fatigue, not uncertainty. Every season shifts, every storm weakens, every prolonged challenge eventually yields to change. But only those who remain long enough witness the transition. Only those who refuse premature surrender experience the breakthrough. Strength is most valuable when it is hardest to sustain. Belief is most powerful when it is most difficult to maintain. Persistence is most meaningful when quitting appears most reasonable. This is the final refinement of resilience. To continue not because it feels easy, not because success is guaranteed, but because commitment has become stronger than discomfort, because vision has become louder than doubt, because the decision to endure has become non-negotiable. So when you feel the weight of the journey, when exhaustion tempts retreat, when progress feels painfully slow, pause, but do not surrender. Rest, but do not abandon. Reflect, but do not retreat. You may be far closer than you realize. Stay strong when it is hardest.